Hello, and welcome to episode 170 on the Everyday Joy podcast. I'm your host, Joy Ravella, and I want to do a very special shout out to Christian Jobs Australia. They love this podcast and they wanted you to know about Australia's most popular Christian job board with thousands of site visitors each day. You can check out their website in the description below, christianjobs.com.au. Now, quick question before we dive into today's episode. When it comes to asking for advice, asking for help, asking for training, how good are you at asking, and how good are you at asking the right people? Two very different questions. Well, that's what today's conversation is all about. We all have areas that we need to grow in, and we are surrounded by incredible human beings who have areas of expertise in all sorts of spaces. Are we maximizing the opportunities we have? That's something to think about as we head into today's episode.
If you don't ask for advice, your plans will fail. With many advisors, they will succeed. That's from Proverbs 15, verse 22 in the ERV version.
I have got the incredible Ash here in studio with me. We are going to launch straight into it.
Okay, let's go.
What are your first impressions of this verse?
Impressions. Well, when I was kind of reflecting, I've actually had a few conversations with people literally in the past week about a very similar thing. I think there is a bit of an unspoken expectation, and I don't know if it's just women or if it's men as well, that we should know everything, that we should have it all together, that we should be able to succeed, we should have the wisdom, even in our walk with God, we should be able to draw close enough to God where we can hear from God to take steps. I think no matter what sphere we're in, there's kind of this expectation that we know how to succeed and that we know how to do well. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but I think sometimes we can become a bit self-reliant. And I just feel like this verse just kind of speaks right to the heart of it. And it says you need advisors. You need people that you can draw close to. You need people that you can bounce ideas off. You need people that you can ask questions to. Not just to air out the ideas, but actually because we need the wealth of wisdom from other trusted people to walk in a godly and fruitful way.
Yeah, that's such a good insight there. I think you're right. I think you're onto something there. We're expected to have all the answers.
Yeah.
So good. I think my first impression of this verse is the first bit really jumped out at me today because we've talked about this verse before. And if you want to look at this verse in previous episodes, just like in the search bar, type in Proverbs 15:22 and you can look at the other angles.
Amazing.
But the first bit says, if you don't ask for advice. And that was the thing that jumped out at me today is we need to ask for advice.
That's so true.
Not ask, what are your general thoughts? Not like, for example, right?
Yeah.
We are thinking about adopting a kitten.
Yeah.
So we're very excited about this.
Love it.
Now, we can do all the Googling. We can do all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But when we went to the breeder's house, she said, well, do you have any questions for me? Now, we could have said, oh, no, we're good. That's fine. But we actually had a list of questions prepared. And we're like, right, how much exercise does this cat need a day? What are the dietary requirements?
Yeah.
And I think what this verse reminds me of is that there's a bit of responsibility on our end to ask the right questions.
So true.
Like, you can't just say, hey, what are your thoughts on this? What do you really want to know?
Yeah.
What do you want to get out of this person? What's the information you need? And that takes time, that takes energy, and it takes intention.
Yes.
Asking doesn't happen just by the by. Sometimes you get free advice.
Yes.
Most of the time, though, if you want to get what you want, you have to take the time to craft the right question.
It's so true.
I think that was my first impression of this
That's such
verse.
a great thought. Yeah, I think so often people have an expectation either that they can do it on their own or because because we all do it so often, people think everyone else has it all together. So if no one's asking questions to anyone, we're all just in this perpetual cycle of everyone thinking we're all doing great on our own, but no one's jumping out trying to get advice from each other.
Yeah, and I think that could be like a really great takeaway.
Yeah.
Ask good questions.
Yeah. Find people that are trusted or, you know, I think something that's so cool is like, for example, Joy, you are incredible at radio. You are incredible at your job. Everything that you do is fantastic.
Oh.
And so I just sometimes want to go, Joy, I have all these questions. How can I do better? How can I do this? But I think it's finding someone like yourself who is doing really well in that sphere to be like, wow, how do I grow and take steps closer to what that person is doing, if there's like an admirable quality in that person.
And I mean, on the flip side, I would love nothing more than to share what I know with you. If you were to come to me and say, Joy, and you ask those questions, I'd be like, yes,
it's so
let's
true.
sit down, let's share the knowledge. Because I think when you get to a certain place of mastery, not saying that I'm a master in this, I've still got a long way to go, but I think when you get to a certain level, the real joy comes in passing on the knowledge and in seeing other people flourish and grow, for most people anyway.
Yeah. And I think some people maybe have the expectation that asking the question won't actually get a good response. But I think that, like you were saying, most people would be absolutely honored to have a conversation like that. You know, we need to share wisdom. We need to share our insights. You know, that's how we grow as people.
Absolutely. And it's a great relationship builder as well.
100%.
Yeah.
I love that.
What does this verse tell you about who God is or what matters to him?
I think that it says to me that God knows that we're going to make mistakes and God knows that we don't have all the answers and that we're going to try and think that we have all the answers. Yeah. I think that if you have a bit of a step back from it, God's saying you need to ask for advice. He's saying you need to find people and advisors and a community come to around you to be able to succeed. And I think it just shows me that God goes, come on, Ash, stop thinking you know everything. Like, stop thinking you can do this all on your own. Yeah. You don't have to prove anything to me. And that's something that God said a lot to me in my life is you don't have to prove anything to me. Like, you just need to love me and you need to walk with me. And sometimes I think maybe we feel like we have to prove something, but we actually don't.
Yeah, so good, Ash. And I think that's the beauty of this verse is that it doesn't expect you to have all the answers.
100%.
There's a freedom in that.
100%.
And for you listening right now, if you don't have all the answers, don't beat yourself up for it. No one does.
Yeah. I think one of the most integrous things that I've like heard particularly like working in churches and, you know, organizations is when people go, I actually don't have the answer. I don't know, but let me go back to you. Let me ask some questions. Let me find out. There's something so integrous and honoring and just gentle about going, hey, I actually don't have all the answers and that's okay.
Yeah, and I think we are moving in towards a culture where we respect that more in people.
Yes.
I think before maybe like 100 years ago, or maybe even, 20 or 30 years ago, we respected leaders who didn't show any signs of weakness. I think Brene Brown's done a lot of great work in the area of vulnerability and bravery and all of that. And I think that's just something that we are respecting and valuing more as a society, which is really good. It's really exciting. So do you have a story of how this verse has come alive in your world, Ash?
I think that I've had to ask for a lot of advice. If you're unaware, I'm a human and I need help. And I think that I've actually really struggled to ask for advice often. I think that I want to have it all together. I think also, like, I'm I believe the youngest person in our organization. And
are you?
I'm pretty sure I am. And there is a level of...
You don't seem like the youngest in the sense like your maturity and wisdom doesn't translate that way. But yes, you probably
in the
are.
Age scheme of things.
Ash.
I know. Oh my goodness. But I think that sometimes I feel like, not even just in a workplace scenario, but just in life in general, I feel like sometimes I feel as though I need to prove myself. I feel as though I need to, have all the answers and get it right. And I think I've gone through a season, probably in the last year, where I've really had to kind of lay down my ability. And I say my ability because I think sometimes when you don't ask for help, you often are relying on yourself. You know, I think that when I'm trusting in God, it's probably a bit different. But I think sometimes when I am just relying on myself, I don't ask for help. But I would say that, you know, I've gone through, you know, seasons where it's really hard to open up and kind of, if you listen to the first episode, I was kind of talking a bit about fear and things, but I think it's with that situation in particular, I really had to reach out to like a leader of mine and just say, hey, like I'm really struggling with this. Similar situation. I actually know you've struggled with these things and, you know, you're maybe 6 years ahead of me in your walk with God and all these different things. And there were kind of two elements. I said, one, how do you get through it? What practically do you do to kind of get through this situation? And the other thing that I actually asked is like, how do I continue to grow in this? Because I think it's one thing to ask a question that kind of ticks a box, but it's another thing to be challenged and another thing to be accountable. So now the result of that conversation was, hey, anytime you're feeling those feelings, send me a message and I will pray for you. I will ask you those questions back and I will see how you're going. And I think asking questions, getting those kind of accountability sort of next step sort of things is really helpful when it comes to that wisdom. And yeah, it's been really fruitful for me in this last few months.
Yeah, and I think it's so good that you sought the time and like you literally, and you got to go back and listen to one of Ash's first episodes. I'll link it in the description below, but you set up a time and you were like, I need to talk to you about this. And I think it comes back to the first impression of this verse, which is it's very much it doesn't happen by accident. No. We have to ask for advice. We've got to ask our leaders. We've got to show our vulnerability. We've got to say we've actually got a skill gap here and be okay to share that. And there's a lot around that in terms of like trust and timing and tone, all those sorts of things.
For sure.
But at the end of the day, look, if you are struggling to ask the people around you for advice and you're not quite sure if they are the right person to go to, like, go to the ultimate advice giver. Go to the ultimate advisor, the ultimate counselor. Go to God. You can trust him. You can go to him for anything. You can even go to him and say, God, who should I go to?
It's so true. It's so true. And I've done that before as well. I've been like, God, and there'll be different people for different situations. And I think if you go, hey, God, I really need someone to come alongside me. Lord, would you help show me who that person can be? And so often God does do that and he reveals someone to you, or sometimes he just reminds you himself in that moment. No, I'm the one that can comfort you. I'm the one that can show you that wisdom and that advice. But that would be the number one takeaway from today is seek Jesus for someone to come alongside with.
Before I dive into today's application, I just think so many things Ash said today were just so full of wisdom. Asking Jesus for who you can go to for advice, being humble when you approach someone when you're struggling and saying, look, you're a few years or you're a few brackets ahead of where I am. What advice would you give me? That is such a powerful question to ask. And also, you never know who around you can help. It's so funny because earlier today I was having a good old chat with one of the ladies who works in finance here. And I was just telling her about, this dress I'm sewing. And she said to me, oh, did you know that I actually used to make dresses for all of my siblings? I said, no way. And I said, can I show you one of my dresses? I've got this particular one that doesn't fit me really well and I want to make it again. And so I showed her the image and she said, great, well, here's how you would size it down. And she took a piece of paper out, she drew some diagrams, and literally 5 minutes later, I walked away from that room richer because I had grown in knowledge, because there was someone who was willing to invest knowledge and who was so excited to do so as well. And that's the application for today. I think people genuinely love to share on things they are passionate about, and often people are good at the things they're passionate about. So what's an area in your life that you could grow in? And who is someone in your world that you can approach in humility, in the right way, with the right intention, to just get 15 minutes of their time? I remember someone saying to me years ago that one of the best ways to grow is to email or message someone and say, can I just get 15 minutes of your time? I'll buy you a coffee. And that $5 investment might take you further than a 5-year degree, because people are filled with wisdom. People and relationships are key when it comes to growth, and people matter to God. Today we're taking a look at Proverbs 15:22. If you don't ask for advice, your plans will fail. With many advisors, they will succeed. Such a great topic for today, and I hope that you had the opportunity to ask someone today, or maybe give advice when someone asks you. Something to think about. This conversation is going to be extended over on the Facebook community, and the link to that is in the description below. Cannot wait to catch up again tomorrow with Ash here on the Everyday Joy podcast.